Chapter 1. The cobblestone streets of Charleston, bathed in the soft glow of lanterns, buzzed with a strange mixture of excitement and unease as the festival of fears commenced. Ghostly figures roamed the lanes, their costumes a haunting echo of the city's storied past. Laughter mingled with the eerie soundtracks emanating from every corner, creating a symphony that was both festive and foreboding. At the heart of it all, Frankie Mercer, clad in his meticulously crafted Victorian undertaker's attire, surveyed the scene with a critical eye. His vibrant cape fluttered in the balmy southern breeze, an undeniable spectacle among spectacles. Yet, beneath his theatrical grin lay a flicker of concern barely noticeable to the untrained eye as he adjusted the angle of a nearby lantern to better illuminate a shadowy alcove. Everything must be perfect, Frankie muttered to himself. He glanced around, ensuring that each element, from the cryptic symbols adorning the entrance gates to the spectral soundscape, whispered tales of the uncanny and the macabre. As he pivoted to address a small misalignment on a nearby prop, his gaze caught a figure at the periphery. The arrival of Penny Hartwell, known among the locals for her affinity for Charleston's ghostly legends. Her eyes, wide with a mix of nostalgia and thrill, scanned the festival's grand layout. The lanterns cast dancing shadows over her features, which flickered with an emotion difficult to decipher. Curiosity mingled with an undercurrent of sorrow. Penny stepped forward, her boots clicking against the cobblestones, each step drawing her deeper into the festival's heart. She paused by a stall draped in black velvet, where tales of lost souls and forbidden loves were whispered not just by the costume teller, but by every fold of the dark fabric fluttering in the night air. Penny offered him a small, tight-lipped smile. "Mr. Mercer, your dedication to authenticity is impressive as always." Her gaze drifted past him, towards the center stage, where later tonight the tale of the haunted bride would unfold, a story that tugged at her heartstrings more personally than most knew. "Ah, you flatter me," Frankie replied, though his eyes briefly mirrored her seriousness. "I do hope tonight's performances resonate with you, especially, well," he gestured vaguely towards the stage, hesitating. "But they always do," Penny said softly, her mind already wandering through corridors of memory, where echoes of her mother's laughter mingled with whispered ghost stories from her childhood. She moved away from Frankie, drawn inexorably towards the stage that stood ready to host the evening's most haunting performance. As Penny Hartwell stepped through the arched gateway adorned with flickering lanterns, the festival of fears unfolded before her like a living canvas of the supernatural. She paused briefly, letting the atmosphere seep into her bones. The chill of the ghostly figures swirling around, the haunting melodies floating in the air, and the subtle scent of autumn that mingled with the aroma of spiced apple cider from nearby stalls. The lanes of Charleston, transformed for the occasion, were a maze of wonder and whispering dread. Each stall and performer added layers to the festival's eerie narrative. Penny moved with a quiet grace, her eyes reflecting a mixture of awe and a deep-seated melancholy that seemed to draw her further into the heart of the festival. Approaching a stall veiled in black tully, where an old storyteller recounted tales of doomed lovers and spectral apparitions, Penny listened intently. The storyteller's voice, raspy and laden with years of retelling, added a texture to the night that felt almost palpable. Penny's fingers brushed against the pendant at her neck, a simple silver locket containing the last photo taken of her mother, who had vanished like a wisp of smoke many years ago. The story of the haunted bride was more than just a tale to her. It was a thread woven into the fabric of her life's mystery. Shaking off the grip of the tale, she continued her exploration. At each turn, performers draped in ghostly attire reached out to spectators, their faces painted to resemble the iconic phantoms of Charleston's lore. Yet, amidst this spectral ballet, Penny's detective instincts noted more than just the theatrical. Her gaze cut through the crowd, observing interactions and filing away faces under flickering lights. Details that others might overlook, but could be pieces of a larger puzzle. Suddenly, from behind a curtain of pale mist generated by machines for effect, emerged Frankie Mercer. His figure cut a striking silhouette against the backdrop of lantern-lit cobblestones. "Enjoying the specters tonight, Miss Hartwell?" Frankie's voice broke through her contemplations with a jocular tone. Penny turned towards him, her expression lightening slightly. "It's quite the spectacle," she admitted, allowing a small smile to play on her lips. "The city becomes something else entirely under the guise of these legends." Frankie chuckled, adjusting his top hat with a flourish. "Ah, but legends are often rooted in truth, are they not?" "Darkness has its place in history," Penny replied thoughtfully. "But tonight I hope it remains within the realm of stories." Her words hung between them, a gentle warning wrapped in politeness. "Did you hear about the new actress?" murmured the woman, clutching her husband's arm. "They say she's brought something different to the role, something quite chilling." Her husband nodded solemnly. "It's all fun and games until life starts imitating art a bit too closely." The words struck a chord in Penny's mind. Life imitating art. She mulled over this as she made her way towards the stage area, her senses sharpened for any clue that might unveil more than just ghostly performances on this eerie night. In this corner of Charleston, where shadows danced and legends breathed through cracked lips, Penny Hartwell stood, a figure poised between past grief and present mystery, determined to uncover what lay veiled beneath the festival of fears. Penny meandered through the throng of festival-goers, her attention drawn to a small stage where a woman in a flowing, ethereal gown recounted the legend of a pirate's lost love, her voice a haunting melody against the murmur of the crowd. The ghostly figure of the pirate, portrayed by a tall man in tattered, sea-worn garb, appeared behind her, his presence sending a shiver through the audience. "Behold!" The woman's voice crescendoed as she swept her arm toward the spectral pirate, the sorrow of Captain Reynard, cursed to wander the shores for eternity, seeking his beloved Anne. Penny paused, absorbed by the performance. It was these stories woven into the fabric of Charleston's history that had always captivated her. Each tale seemed to hold a fragment of truth, a fragment perhaps of her own elusive truth. A small boy clutching a toy lantern tugged at his mother's skirt beside Penny. "Is the captain really here?" he whispered, his eyes wide with a blend of fear and excitement. The mother smiled, bending down to his level. "It's just a story, love, but who knows? Tonight is a night for ghosts." Further along the path, under an archway draped with black lace and flickering lights, stood another performer. This one was dressed as a colonial-era lady, complete with a bonnet and a lantern in her hand. She was midway through a tale of unrequited love and spectral warnings. "And so it is said," the colonial lady intoned, "that every full moon you can hear her whisper on the wind, warning all heartbroken souls to beware the dangers of unrequited passions." Penny felt a pang in her chest. The story mirrored her own fears of loving her missing mother from afar, never to receive answers in return. She lingered to listen to the end, her gaze losing focus as she got lost in thought. "Excuse me," a voice suddenly interrupted her reverie. Turning slightly, Penny found herself looking into the eyes of a young man dressed as a Revolutionary War soldier. "Miss, could I interest you in partaking in our next performance? We're short one lady to play the ghost of Annabel Wright." For a moment, Penny hesitated. Then something, perhaps the pull of being part of the story herself, nudged her forward. "Why not?" she replied with more enthusiasm than she felt. "What do I need to do? Just follow my lead and look mournful." He grinned beneath his tricorn hat. As they took their positions on an improvised stage set beside an old oak tree, Penny draped herself in a gray shawl provided by the soldier. The lights dimmed around them, and for a moment Penny was no longer just an observer, but part of Charleston's haunted history. The soldier began narrating the tragic tale of Annabel Wright, who had died waiting for her lover to return from war. Penny walked slowly across the stage at his cue, her expression somber. The role felt unnervingly natural, as if she too were waiting for someone lost in the mists of time. When their brief performance ended to polite applause from gathered spectators, Penny felt an odd mix of exhilaration and melancholy. "It was my pleasure," he replied with a bow. "You have quite the ghostly air about you." Penny smiled wryly. "I suppose I have had some practice with ghosts." Continuing her journey through the festival, each step seemed to draw deeper layers of Charleston's past around her like a cloak. Yet beneath it all lay an undercurrent of tension, an unspoken narrative that whispered just beyond reach. Nearby, under the flickering shadows cast by lanterns hung from low branches, an elderly couple spoke in hushed tones about recent strange occurrences at night. "They say there's been sightings near the old Gibba's house," murmured the man, his voice barely audible over the sound of nearby laughter. "Old tales waking up with new faces," his companion replied with a shudder. These snippets of conversation settled in Penny's mind like pieces of a puzzle. As she moved closer to where the haunted bride would soon be performed, she couldn't shake off a creeping sense of foreboding, like watching storm clouds gather on what had been a clear horizon. As Penny approached the main stage, where the legend of the haunted bride would soon be brought to life, she couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation from a cluster of festival-goers gathered under the dim glow of a gas lamp. Their voices, tinged with anticipation and an undercurrent of unease, blended into the night air like the distant calls of nocturnal birds. "A new actress tonight, isn't it?" one woman asked, her voice a hushed whisper that carried a mixture of excitement and skepticism. "Heard she's got quite a knack for making the dead seem not so dead." Her companion, a tall man in a cloak that brushed against the cobblestones, nodded slowly. "Yes, they say she connects with the role on an almost eerie level. Makes you wonder if some spirits are better left undisturbed." "Disturbing indeed," another voice chimed in, this one belonging to a young man whose face was half hidden under a tricorn hat. "But it's all theatrics, right?" "I wouldn't be so sure," the cloaked man replied, his tone dropping to a more ominous register. "Last year, after the show, there were whispers of strange sightings near the docks. Some say the line between performance and reality got a bit too blurred." A chill ran down Penny's spine as she listened. These stories, part legend, part whispered rumor, formed the backdrop against which her mother had vanished. They were tales Penny had heard since childhood, tales that no longer seemed as fantastical as they once did. Drawing in a deep breath to steady her nerves, Penny stepped away from the group, her eyes scanning the crowd for any other unusual interactions or misplaced details. Her investigative instincts told her that understanding these people and their stories might be key to unraveling not just the mystery of tonight's performance, but perhaps even the deeper secrets of her past. As she made her way closer to the stage, her path crossed with that of an elderly gentleman whose eyes seemed to carry years of unspoken knowledge. "You have the look of someone who sees beyond the masks we wear tonight," he observed, his gaze thoughtful as he adjusted his spectacles. "Be careful, young lady. Some masks are worn not just to entertain but to hide." Penny met his gaze squarely, her voice firm yet respectful. "I believe some masks need to be removed to reveal the truth beneath. That's what I'm here for." The man nodded slowly, his smile widening as if in approval. "Then you are braver than most. But remember, every story has its shadows, and not all shadows are cast by things that mean us well." As she finally reached the stage area, Penny positioned herself near a group of technicians busily adjusting lights and sound equipment. She kept her ears open for any overheard technical cues or last-minute changes that might indicate something out of place. "Everything needs to be perfect for this scene," one technician muttered to another as they tested a fog machine. "Especially tonight with all eyes on us." "Yes," replied his colleague, glancing nervously at a clipboard. "Let's just hope it goes off without a hitch." Their words, meant for each other's ears only, underscored the high stakes of tonight's performance. Penny felt a kinship with these behind the scenes orchestrators. Like them, she was here to ensure that nothing was overlooked. As the first haunting notes of music began to swirl around the gathered crowd, signaling the imminent start of the show, Penny's focus sharpened. This performance might be just another act for many here tonight, but for Penny Hartwell, it was another doorway into the labyrinthine mysteries of Charleston, a city where ghosts danced freely with the living, and where truth lurked behind veils of shadow and light. Penny drifted away from the bustling heart of the festival to a quieter, dimly lit part of the street, where the echoes of the revelry faded into a soft, haunting murmur. Here, under the watchful gaze of ancient oak trees, she found a moment of solitude. The flickering lanterns cast long shadows that danced across the cobblestones, enhancing her sense of isolation. Leaning against the cool stone of an old building, she gazed out over the scene with a reflective eye. The laughter and light-hearted shrieks from the festival-goers seemed distant, muffled by the thick veil of her thoughts. Her mind wandered back to her childhood, to the stories her mother used to whisper before bedtime, tales of lost souls and unresolved destinies that now felt eerily relevant. The festival, with its ghoulish delight and spectral lore, was a yearly reminder of her unresolved past. Each ghost story told, each character donned by an actor, seemed like a mirror reflecting her own search. A search for a ghost who was all too real in her memory. "Penny, for your thoughts?" The voice, warm and familiar, broke her reverie. Turning slightly, Penny smiled as she recognized the figure approaching her. It was Frankie Mercer, his undertaker's costume looking less imposing in the dim light. "Just thinking about how this all connects," Penny replied, gesturing vaguely towards the festival. "How every year we celebrate these ghosts and ghouls, not realizing that some of us are haunted by more than just tales." Frankie nodded, his expression turning thoughtful. "It's a fine line, isn't it, between the stories we tell for thrill and those we live with that chill us to the bone." "Yes," Penny agreed, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear, "and sometimes I wonder if diving into these stories is my way of searching for her." Frankie leaned against the building beside her, his eyes scanning the darkened street before settling back on her face. "This festival might be draped in fiction, Penny, but it's rooted in truths that maybe you're meant to uncover." Their eyes met, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Penny's quest was more than academic or even a mere intrigue. It was deeply personal. "I hope so, Frankie. I really do," she said quietly, "because every year it feels like I'm getting closer to something indefinable, like I'm one story away from unraveling my own mystery." Frankie reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And when you do unravel it, I'll be here." "We all will," he assured her. His words carried a weight of sincerity. Pulling herself upright, Penny took a deep breath and managed a small smile. "Thank you, Frankie, for this," she gestured around them, "for making it feel a little less lonely tonight." Drawing her jacket closer against the chill that had nothing to do with the night air, but everything with what lay ahead, Penny turned back towards the heart of the festival. With each step, resolve steeled her spine and sharpened her focus. The night was far from over, its shadows long and deep, much like the mysteries she intended to chase. And chase them she would, through whispered legends and spectral sightings until she found the truth hidden beneath layers of history and heartache.